Hello world, hello Facebook, hello all those watching this on listenvisionlive.com. It's the Nitty Gritty Show. It's your boy Jay DeCosta.
It's your girl Katniss.
And together we are the Nitty Gritty.
It's Tim Wise. You're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Everybody, this is Stevie Powell. You're now watching the Nitty Gritty Show. Check it out.
And so I'm DeCosta and you need to watch the Nitty Gritty Show.
My name is Sherman Moss, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
That's the Grant Thompson, a.k.a. G. Ainsworth, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
I'm Anthony White, and this is the Nitty Gritty Show.
Yeah.
Bam, it's Jay Thompson. You're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
You are watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
My name is Jay Grant Thompson, and guess what? You're in tune to the Nitty Gritty Show.
I'm Will Jawando, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
And my name is Mitch Holmes, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
My name is Peter DeCosta and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
This is Pastor Rob, and you're on the Nitty Gritty Show.
I'm Ray Pittman, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Hey, this is Joni Ford of Ford Wellness, and you're watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
Yo, what's going on? It's your boy Benny Black, and you are watching the Nitty Gritty Show.
It's time for the Nitty Gritty. Conversations be real live. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. The revolution's not televised. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. Reaching out to your conscious mind. It's time for the Nitty Gritty. More than talking, you're taking action. It's time for the Nitty Gritty.
I like that song, man. It gets me going every time I hear it, though. For real. It really does. What's going on, world? What's going on, Facebook? Everybody catching this live on listenvisionlive.com. It's your boy, Jay DeCosta.
And it's your girl Katniss.
And together we are
The
the
Nitty
Nitty Gritty. Very excited to have everyone on this pleasant Easter Sunday. We have with us a clinical therapist, Rosenny Fenton. Mm-hmm. Very excited to have you, ma'am. We've been wanting to have a conversation around mental health and therapy in the Black community. We know that's been kind of stigmatized, and happy to have you on this to kind of break through some of that conversation to help our people, get the help that they need, and just really just kind of draw that conversation home and hopefully break some of the stereotypes that people have heard and open people up to better help and wealth in their life. So excited to have you on. You are a New York native, right? Brooklyn?
Yes. Brooklyn, stand up.
All right. So favorite rappers got to be like Biggie, Jay-Z, all that good stuff, right?
What? One of my favorites are Outkast, actually.
But Outkast is
and
great.
And guys,
though.
did you hear? Outkast has a new EP out.
Seriously?
No. Yes, they just released it.
Blessings to that.
Oh my gosh, you can't give me news.
I
heard it. I found out through it via Facebook. I haven't listened to it. I forgot to tell him.
Okay, so I'm about to check that out. I know what I'm doing when we're done with the show today.
Either it's out or it's coming out this week. I saw something on Facebook that was saying, new EP, and it was like a whole bunch of comments like, "Oh my God, Outkast!" So.
Okay. So we got to look into that. So
maybe they're preparing for the Super Bowl because it is in Atlanta.
It is. I'm hoping
that would make sense.
I hope that y'all need Outkast to be the performers there. It better be a bunch of Atlanta rappers. I don't want to see no one else.
Yeah.
I'm just saying if it's going to be in Atlanta.
Atlanta has enough talent though that they'll be good.
Yeah. So I don't want to see Taylor Swift or somebody. Let's just make sure we do this right. Brooklyn native. Looks like you came to DC because you went to Georgetown.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what's up. And then you also got your master's in social work from Columbia University.
Yes, went back home and started the career.
That's what's up. And then you came back and you had a full career. I mean, you've done work in Durham, working with functional family therapy.
Yes.
I see that you also worked with various school-based mental programs.
Yes. My last job here in D.C. actually was with D.C. government in the school mental health program right down the street.
Wow. And then also you did some policy stuff out there in New York with Michael Bloomberg, right? Mayor Michael Bloomberg.
Yes, my old boss. Yes.
So and so I'm happy that you have all that experience, and I know that you can't be an expert of it all, but you have had such a rich career that you're going to be able to have a really healthy conversation with us today.
We'll start a conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And then that's the thing about mental health. It never ends, the conversation. Mm-hmm. But we'll get it started.
Yeah. So really excited to have you on. You guys are going to learn more about Rosenny here in the coming minutes. But before we get there, we got to give out these to hell withs, and we got to show some blessings because it is Easter Sunday. So we going to show some blessings. But first, the to hell withs. Let's get it out the way. members who scam Howard University, and then also your alma mater, Columbia University. We've seen some embezzlement of school funds, and I'm really disappointed about Howard being an HBCU. And we've seen the misuse of a lot of funds in various HBCUs across the country, and it's something that has to stop. We're right across the street from Howard University, and when you look at that school, this is like the mecca of black excellence. So many people have gone there. There's no reason why that school should not look better than that.
I agree.
And I'm not trying to say it's a total dump, but it needs to look better than what it is.
Of course.
And and the sad part is the people that scammed it, they were fly. They were buying like Gucci bags.
They didn't
Range
even think
Rovers.
smart enough to at least invest it.
No, I mean
not saying that what they did was right, but what I'm saying is at least invest it. When you out here with a whole media team on Instagram, it's like young.
And
you looking like real guilty.
And it frustrates me because it goes back to just misspending in our community, right? It's like you didn't think to invest in no houses in Baltimore right up the street. You could have done so much more, but not trying to say they should have scammed the money, but it's just like the reasons why they scam. It shows in the ignorance. Or you see how people will just like, they'll go to homecoming, spend thousands on tickets, looking fly for everybody, but where's the money going to support your school? Like, are you giving back really? And then when the money is being given back, are we putting the right people in place to make sure that Howard is becoming more so excellent as the years go by?
That's key. And I just want to make this comment and then I'm done. At HBCUs, to me, it seems as though people who get into these positions generally are cool with so-and-so or they're Greek affiliated. They ran the yard back in the day, but they're not necessarily the expert per se. I feel like as an African-American, if you work at an HBCU, you have a responsibility to make sure that you are empowering these young black kings and queens and that you are having high morale. And when you don't, it just looks really, really bad. On top of what the world already perceives about HBCUs being lesser than that of PWIs. So I just want to put that out there. Like, we have a responsibility as a community to hold people accountable. And as the students, I really encourage you to talk to your administrators. And if you have an opportunity to vote or voice your opinion, please do so because it really does matter.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so we got to do better with that. Second to hell with, and this goes to misspending, right? A lot of people are going to be upset about this one, but y'all know I don't care. Anyone who went to church today but didn't put anything in the offering basket or don't give charitably regularly, maybe you don't believe in giving to a church, okay, whatever, but you don't give charitably regularly, but you came to church fresh in a mug, right? You got a fur on, you got like the bomb hat, and and there's nothing wrong if you bless, if you got it, you should wear it, right? Or if it's a gift or whatever, wear it. But you have some folks, they got the bomb outfit, but then, they threw a couple of quarters and $1 in the offering basket. I'm just saying, if you believe in church enough to be fresh for it, you should believe in it enough to give to it, right? And I'm going to leave that one where it is. If you feel convicted, hallelujah. Going on to the blessings, right? But still, blessings to everyone who ever went to church today. Maybe you don't go regularly. Maybe you haven't been in a while. Maybe you go all the time. But if you got there, you got touched. You got some spiritual awakening in your life. Blessings to you. I know a lot of families get together today. A lot of folks are at home with their families having dinner and all that. So that's a great thing. So hopefully people are not overly bogged down with social media or doing everything else they do, but actually focusing on the time with those that they love. So blessings to those. And then also, got to give a shout out to those who gave their life for the fight for civil rights and justice. As you guys know, April 4th will be the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. So blessings to that. And then so many besides Martin Luther King have gave their life. And still today, so many people are losing their life because of racism and profiling and racial bigotry in this country. Whereas we won't call a white kid that shoots up 17 kids a terrorist, but somehow we're threatened by the kid carrying an Arizona iced tea and some Skittles, or somebody who clearly has their hand up. We still feel the need to shoot him, but meanwhile, we got white guys on bridges fighting cops, pulling out guns from their back pocket, and that person just gets arrested somehow, and their mental health is looked at. So happy we're talking mental health today. So anyways, blessings to those, and we're about to get down to the nitty gritty. I have a video. It was a cohort of Chicago therapists. They got together and they're talking about some of the stigmatisms in the black community. This video, they'll talk a little bit about black men. And then we're going to get down to our conversation with Rosenny, and we're going to break some of this down to get down to the nitty gritty. Jay, can you play that video for me, sir?
The Chicago Association of Black Psychologists put on an uncensored, unfiltered, all-out discussion about what they say is a cause for concern in the black community. That is, black males and their mental health.
I was taught that you don't need to have emotions because you're a man and you're a wimp. Don't cry, whatever, suck it up.
The first step is education. Symptoms and triggers. 98% of this country has mental health issues. They just go untreated.
Mental health amongst black males, some say it's an issue. That's why Dr. Abari Cartman decided to hold an intimate discussion about it at the Jacob H. Carruthers Center for Inner Studies. Dozens filled the room and lended a close ear to the things that were being said, things like how some black males struggle with expressing their emotions.
Whatever you feel and you keep it to yourself. Like you don't share that because you're not a man. Men don't share their feelings.
Richard Badger says males have been conditioned to suppress their emotions from day one.
You as a boy, me as a boy, we always grew up where if you were hurting, you couldn't reveal it. And unfortunately, that's still kind of the paradigm today.
The discussion also paid particular attention to another sensitive topic, domestic violence.
Police say Harvey fatally stabbed Julia, then jumped to his death from her apartment building.
I have been a victim of domestic violence, not once but twice. Both times I ended up in jail.
Laverne Badger, Richard's wife, was a victim of domestic violence for 13 years. She says domestic violence is slowly killing the black community and a conversation needs to be had.
It's a silent killer. It's something that's affecting our community, our kids, generation after generation. But if we don't discuss it, then there's no solution.
Solutions that Dr. Cartman is trying to solve, which is why he says it's important to bring people together to get various perspectives and to attack the issues at hand.
I think that without clear conversations, that you can be moving fast in the wrong direction, right? So I think there's something about having the intellects and the scholars and the visionaries and the people that are thinking deeply about these issues come together and share what we've learned to then direct the steps so that the action steps are meaningful, are targeted or directed or organized amongst themselves.
And as we heard from the discussion, there were a lot of things that were being brought to the forefront. And Dr. Cartman told me that's exactly what he wanted.
Yeah, so shout out to that organization for the work they're doing and broadcasting that. I feel like that's really important. We need more voices like that. But, bringing this conversation home, Rosenny, I guess, before we even get into the conversation, a lot of people in our community don't aspire sometimes to be like therapists or go into that field. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, you want to be a doctor maybe like, in the operating room because that, that sounds good, or some people might say it sounds sexy, right? Or, people want to be a lawyer or they want, the jobs where they're chasing the money and the fame, but, to really do the groundwork, and you've done a lot of that. What kind of got you on that path to want to treat people in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, what got me on that was growing up in East New York, Brooklyn in particular, in the 80s at the height of the crack epidemic, and so when I was growing up in East New York, it had the 8th highest homicide rate in the nation.
Wow.
And so like gun violence and shooting was regular sound, the crackhead shuffle, crack vials and needles, and that just being around us. Now, I never try to overrepresent where I came from because I grew up in a 2-parent household. Both of my parents worked when the time came, and our family was always very solid. My father owned the home that we lived in, so this wasn't a precious situation either. However, it was a community that I couldn't understand. And I knew that we as a people were better than what I was seeing around us. And so I very much wanted to be a part of the solution. And so my entire life has been about being a part of the solution to that problem. And the problem has morphed over time, which is why I'm at a mental health place. That's how I choose to intervene today.
Nice. And and currently that's what you're working with now as a
therapist. Yeah. I mean, and so the long and short lesson of trying my hand at affecting change through public policy was that I didn't think I could get the changes that I was wanting to make happen because the more I lived life and the more I lived the joys of life, right? Like you travel for the first time and you start to, you leave those burdens behind for 2 seconds and you're like, oh my gosh, like life can be so much bigger and better than anything I could have even imagined, right? So the first time I got a taste of that, I was like, no, it's that we should all be allowed to just be whatever you want to be. I don't care what the hell it is, as long as you're not hurting me or anybody else. But, you know, we should all have the right to just be. And so public policy is good. You know, somebody needs to improve our schools. Somebody needs to do something about gun violence. Somebody needs to do something about healthcare. But I didn't want to be a part of that system anymore because it's a lot of slow going, in my personal opinion. But as a therapist, every time someone comes into the room, I can help them feel better in that 50 minutes, you know? And you leave, and then the next time you come and you feel a little better, and then you leave, and the next time you feel a little, and then next thing you know, the world around you is changing. Your experience of life is changing. So I might not be able to do anything about DC public schools, and something needs to be done.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Right. But what I can do is help the kids that I worked with in those schools realize that there was more to life than the nitty gritty that they were experiencing, you know?
Yeah, and you know, one thing, my bad.
That's
One
okay.
thing you brought up that I'm happy that you said is that we all need the ability to just be. I say this all the time, I think, in conversation with friends, is that, not trying to make this a white versus black thing, but it is true that in this country and all over the world, white people have that freedom sometimes just to be, or all the time, or most of the time just to be, right? They can be Republicans, they could be Democrat, they could be conservative, they could be liberals, they can be Christian, they can be experimental, atheists, and meanwhile, a lot of other organizations, well, not organizations, but other races and subgroups, you have to be Democrat, you have to be this, and you're forced to be one thing, and we don't have the ability just to be. And I think that speaks a lot to just, you know, stigmatism within, you know, this mental health. I think some of it, I don't know if it starts there, but I know there's a large part of it, right?
Well, and you know, I think the thing is that the bar for us is never really the same, unfortunately. And I find myself jumping onto a judgy bandwagon. So for example, I was watching the first episode of the HBO special that Two Dope Queens did, right? And there was one part where, you know, one of the girls is being funny and was like humping the stool or something. But I was like, oh my God, it's a mostly white audience, you know, and why are you doing that? Like, you know, we're black. We have to be different, you know? And then, like, I had to fall back. But why is Amy Schumer allowed to be as raunchy as she wants to?
Or Ellen DeGeneres and all of them. Yeah.
Why, you know, and so, like, the thing about us just being, like, why can't I let her be? You know, and why can't I let myself be? You know, and so, yeah, I agree with you, and it's just, it's deep.
And I think back to letting us be, as well as experiences. I feel like a lot of times in our community, we have these experiences where, because we're not able to be, there's a lot of verbal attack in various households. Right. And the way we express ourselves sometimes is through verbal abuse. Yes. So what are some triggers, or what are some things that you've witnessed that could cause someone's experience to be negative and cause them to have mental health issues?
Oh, it's wide range of things. But for kids, a lot of it is environmental.
Okay.
And so it can just be an environment of poverty and stress and community violence. Mostly, I think if I were to be overly broad, right? Like, some people would cause issue with this, but if I were to be overly broad, what causes us a lot, mental health issues, we should actually specify to depression and anxiety.
Okay.
That's usually how it shows up. Like, you're either worrying too much, or you're so sad that you're no longer able to participate in your everyday life. So there's other forms of mental health issues, such as PTSD, which is actually like extreme anxiety. Or you can have like schizophrenia and other things like that. But most people are really just dealing with anxiety and depression. And the reason why most people are confronted with anxiety and depression, if I'm going to be overly simplified, like, nobody take this to the bank, but is when I'm trying to process the world and it don't make sense. for one reason or the other, right? So I can't understand why my parents are arguing as much as they are, or I can't understand why I feel like I don't fit in when everybody else seems like they fit in, or I can't understand why I can't accept my body, or why I get so many negative images from the outside world regarding how I naturally look. You know, I can't understand. You know, it's like it's all of the, like, so it could be a whole lot of questions that can lead to that, but usually it's like somehow how I'm looking at the world doesn't jive with what I'm seeing around me, and it causes conflict. And that conflict can cause me to worry, or it could cause me to be depressed.
But I'm happy that you use this simplification of what causes that, right? Because if you look at black people and the things we have endured, especially African Americans, or just anyone of African descent in the westernized world.
Anybody brought over this side in the belly of a boat.
You look at, you look at history, and then you have to wonder, well, why is it in this world that black people were enslaved and treated such a way? Why is it that it's all right for my kids to be gunned down in the street, but it takes a privileged white school to kick off a march for our lives? And you talk about just those simple two symptoms, which is anxiety and depression. And a lot of black people are doing that. A lot of black girls are depressed because we don't value black women in this country. Girls can show up missing in DC. It don't even make headline news, right? Or for a young black girl to be articulate and smart at the age of 11 and speak at a march, it's like, oh my gosh, she's so articulate. Bunch of black girls are articulate. Why is that so special? Or why does it have to be a compliment that if you're black and you speak well, or this within certain cultures, either you acting white, or it's like astonishing to find a black person that know how to speak with some sense. Most of us do. That's what being black is. That is the essence of black excellence. But for some reason, our world hasn't shaped that. And I feel like that's causing some form of anxiety when a police car rides up next to us and we're scared. You know, I mean, and those are causing mental disorders. I don't want to make it negative, but it causes a mental stress that needs to be addressed. I don't want to call it a disorder because I don't think it's so much of a bad thing, because our society has systematically built these things around us.
And I agree with that. And I kind of want to, I want to come back to that, but I wanted to also talk about modern day things that could cause more anxiety and depression. For example, my question, can dating cause depression for various men or women? Can growing up in a household without a father cause anxiety and depression? And when you have these things, how do you identify them and how do you heal yourself? Because I hear a lot of people always saying, I'm searching for happiness. But what I've even learned now is that happiness is in the mind. How do you help transform one's mind to perceive things to be more positive than what they have been perceiving them?
I mean, and the phrase that you'll see everywhere is that happiness is an inside job, right? Like, and that's like we've been conditioned to believe that happiness is something that we acquire through things, right? And so we constantly chase this thing. And once I get my promotion, I'll feel better. Once I get the boyfriend or the girlfriend, I'll feel better. Once I get married, I'll feel better. Once I get my degree, I'll feel better. Name it, right? Once I get a newer car, it's because of where I live. So we constantly think that happiness is something outside. And so we chase these things, but it is inside, like you said. It's in the mind. It's internal. Anything can make anybody feel anxiety or depression. And I think that the key is, and I know this sounds corny and cliche, but it's the honest to God truth. Loving yourself enough to care that you're not feeling well. And so like the thing is like, anxiety is normal. Anxiety motivates you to study for an exam. Anxiety motivated me to make sure I was prepared to come in here and speak with you in a way that's competent and professional. So anxiety is normal. And depression comes and goes. Sadness, not depression. Sadness comes and goes, right? It's when sadness comes to stay that it can turn into depression. So because sadness is normal, because anxiety is normal, we shouldn't expect to never feel those things. But it's when those feelings are chronic and when they start to impede our ability to function, that's when you should go get help. But, and I would say it's not like I think I'm in a bad relationship, I should go get help. It's, you know what? I don't really know what it feels like to be joyful. I've never felt joyful. There's some people that feel that way. Or I remember when I was a kid, I used to be much happier. and I haven't felt that way in a long time. I should go talk to somebody like that, or even, and it should. And the reason why I say a long time is because in our community, it's usually that's what it takes. But it shouldn't have to take that. You know, like if you, once you make a commitment to live your best life, you go slightly off the rails, and you know, like the people who are committed to fitness, for example, right? All they got to do is gain 5-10 pounds, and all of a sudden, you know, they're like, oh, I got to do something. We need to feel the same way. Or people who care about money management, you know, the moment they max out on, or like, you know, spend too much one day, all of a sudden they're back on a budget, you know? So it's the same kind of thing, like caring enough about your well-being. But to talk about this general theme about Black people and why it's so hard for us, I think the reason why it's so hard for us to get help is because we have a very low expectation that we can feel good.
Wow.
Wow.
That's, you know, that's crazy that you said that. And I think it's funny that in the video, Black men were saying that from a very young age, they were taught that they cannot show emotion.
Right.
And because Black men are supposed to be the head of our household, if they're hurting, if they're struggling, if they were molested, which is something in our community we never talk about.
But more men probably, I think there's studies that more men experience that than women.
I don't know.
I don't know the statistics, but I'll say I know that molestation occurs in various households. I don't know the statistics.
Same thing with rape.
Right, exactly. And
like,
we
don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it. We just gloss over it.
We don't talk about it.
I want to know, how important is it for you to express your emotions? Because I've always heard that, you know, as women, sometimes it's like you're over emotional. Is that a such thing? And can you be over emotional? Can your emotions be so out of whack that you're not in control? Or is there something that is a good thing that when you are expressing your emotions?
You know, I mean, the test with as a clinician always is the behavior disrupting your life?
Okay.
Right. So if your emotional outbursts cause you to be disruptive at the bank while you're waiting online, right? That's disruptive. If you can't keep a job because of your emotional outbursts, if you can't stay in the relationship that you want to be in because of your emotional outbursts, you know, those kinds of things. If it's disrupting your life, then that's a clear line, right? But outside of that, usually the reason why there's the overexpression is because we're not doing the we're not taking advantage of the small opportunities. You know, so this is the benefit of having worked with kids, is the way I explain it to kids is like, imagine that we're a balloon and our emotions are the air that fills up the balloon. And so what happens if you fill a balloon up with too much air?
It pops.
It pops, right. And so that's exactly it. Like, but if you let out a little bit of air at a time, that'll never happen. The balloon will always stay kind of supple. You know, it won't ever get to that point. Same thing though, if you put too much air in it and then all of a sudden let it go. You know, the balloon
flies off.
Right. It's gonna.
I like that.
So, you know, either way, you're gonna have a disrupted outburst, whether it be the popping or the balloon going all over the place. But the goal is just to let out enough emotion, little by little, so that you never get to that taut balloon state.
And you know what? And I think about that even in the video, they addressed domestic violence, and, you know, they addressed how, you know, a woman can flare off. Somehow the man gets in trouble, right? Yeah. And that's not to put it all on women. That's not to make a men versus women statement, because that is the legal system coming in. But it does come back to what you just said about that. But I like the balloon example because it's simple, and I think our viewers can get it. I think a lot of times more so with men, because men don't let air out at all, right? So it tends to pop. That's when you'll get a guy who generally is nice, and you'll be like, so-and-so reacted that way? Right. That don't seem like so-and-so. But men, especially black men, are taught from an early age, you got to be strong, don't cry, can't be no punk, no puffda.
But see, and I agree with that, but I would say that women, I think it's a falsehood that black women are expressing their emotions. Like, we do a lot of talking, but I don't know if we're really expressing our emotions. And by emotions, and like, this is a simple tool for anybody you know, it's I feel, and then you put in an emotion. Not I feel like, not I feel that. I feel sad, I feel mad, I feel happy, I feel worried, I feel, and then a feeling word, because.
But is it almost like maybe women could be almost like the other example of the balloon where you let too much air out, per se? Like, because I've seen it like where I use this example with like black mothers sometimes, right? It's like they'll let a lot of stuff slide, but then eventually, you know, you just do something that irk them, and then it's like they beat your butt for 30 minutes, but then they're whooping you for 30 minutes because it's almost like their emotions are high because they're saying it as they're whooping you. After all I did for you, and you're going and it's almost like the air is just being let out. Almost too fast.
Or they're popping. It could be one or the other.
Yeah.
But this is the thing is they're saying a lot of words, but none of those words are, I feel disappointed because I asked you to do and you didn't.
I see what she's saying.
Yeah.
You're saying you need to be able to identify the problem.
Yeah.
And what you just present to us, to me, was proper communication.
Right.
I think a lot of times when you have these volatile situations is that you're not properly communicating. To me, communication is paramount. And I think a lot of times, like you said, people say, well, I feel like you were texting so-and-so, and that's not getting to the root. The reason why I am upset is that, you know, when you're always on your phone, to me, it shows that you don't respect me, and it therefore causes me to have trust issues. So it makes me feel sad and disappointed, things of that nature. We don't identify it.
And how often have you heard anyone say that?
I don't. I feel like people
No one
just
says that.
blow up, or they just attack and go for the jugular, as opposed to looking for resolve.
Right, and because the fact is that me saying how I feel and saying why is very vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's very vulnerable. But this is the other thing, though. It's the ultimate act of self-care.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You know, like you really, because like, and that's the thing, like that, and that's why it's one of the first skills I'll teach any of my clients, right? Is I feel statements, basic I feel statements. Why? Because it's you saying to you, I love me enough to be aware of how I'm feeling and to let you know. I love me enough. You know, and once that's your attitude about you, you know the saying that the world treats you how you treat you? So you flip the whole game with that. You know what I mean?
I love me enough to be aware about how I'm feeling and to let you know.
Yes.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, it's such a simple thing, but you know, it's not really used. I think we have so many traditions within the black community that are actually backwards to what total health would be. And we've seen it from, you know, our grandparents on down. There's so many like family secrets, and the problem is they're secrets. No one ever talks about it. No one ever dispels. And then we keep it hidden from the next generation. And then they go blind with knowledge on how to endure or encounter these things, life. Because life is going to happen. You can't control life, but you can control how you react to life.
Yes.
But we're not giving our kids those cues. You know, we don't want to talk about why mommy and daddy got divorced. We don't want to talk about, well, why did I give my body at such an early age or what happened, right? And until we start having these conversations about, well, you know, I felt like I was peer pressured. If you don't let your son know that, then your son, because you don't really teach him about sex or, you know, why is it that males engage in this kind of behavior from an emotional or, you know, in using EQ, emotional intelligence, they repeat the same problems.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you're getting to what Katniss was talking about earlier, you know, so if I am not talking about things that matter, the silent message is that we don't talk. You know, and so then therefore I'm not going to really talk about anything. And it kind of, and the thing is that you slowly start to dull your senses. So for a lot of my clients, even kids, you'd be surprised how quickly we can be conditioned into ignoring who we are and how we feel. You know, and so a lot of my work early on is helping you learn what feelings feel like really like being in your body enough to know the difference between sad, angry, worried.
Wow.
Because those are three feelings that we mix up all the time and blow up because we think we ought to be angry when we're really worried, and you know, and then you can't communicate accurately. It's all just mixed up.
Yeah, I'm happy you touched on a lot of those. And I think, one that's been a big debate, and I kind of like want to get into some of that. They talk about like the over-diagnosis of our children or it being misused, like, ADD versus ADHD. And we're kind of like, is this good or is it bad? I have a clip from Dr. Umar Johnson. He was on one of the radio stations, and he kind of spoke on this. And then I want to kind of like maybe break it down some with you. Jay, can you play that video for me, the Umar video?
ADD, Attention Deficit Disorder, comes to us in 1980, the same year that the CIA started mass incarcerating black males. They started locking up men for selling dope while they were giving dope to our boys in school. It became ADHD in 87. And guess why?
Why?
There's no drug that can make your son pay attention. So simply diagnosing a black boy with attention deficit disorder did not result in a prescription. The drug companies were losing money. Wall Street wasn't getting paid. So they forced the American Psychiatric Association to add the H, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Now everybody could get doped up. And that what they call ADHD is nothing more than the manifestation of a kid who is bored or a teacher who can't maintain his attention. He'll be on a video game for 12 hours. That's not ADHD. 97% of American teachers are women. 93% of that 97% are middle-class white women. The black boy doesn't have a problem learning. He has a problem being mistreated by people who don't understand him. Fix the system. Stop.
So I mean, he said a lot. I mean, he said a lot. But you know, one thing that's been talked about a lot is Dr. Umar Johnson. There's been a lot of controversy around him. I don't agree with everything he says. I don't subscribe to his whole message, but I think a lot of stuff he says around education, to me, seems to make sense. And, are we, because you've done some work with policy, are we over-diagnosing these children, or at least when they're diagnosed, are they getting the proper help they need when they go into these resource classes and things of that nature?
So I'm going to say I'm a numbers person because I was a policy person. So I need to see the numbers before I'm able to comment in an informed way, right? What I will say is that I think the problem that he's talking about is more of a systemic problem in how our systems don't know how to meet the needs of children of color.
Okay. Yep.
And so, and I know that, but that's really what it is that, and that frankly, I would say that they don't know how to meet the needs of most children, and they especially don't know how to meet the needs of traumatized children. Right. And so what happens is, and I can't tell you how many times a hyperactive child was brought to me and, people were like, oh, I think he's ADHD. Now, I take diagnosing very seriously, very seriously. I don't slap on labels, just because you look a little jumpy, right? And I'd be like, I don't know about that. And what I came to realize in my practice was that anxiety disorder presents a lot like ADHD. You will have a hyperactive child who is unable to focus, is unable to stay seated for the expected period of time. I can go through all of the things and meet criteria for ADHD. And my practice would always be I would always diagnose anxiety disorder not otherwise specified, rule out ADHD. And now in all the kids, I would say out of 10 kids, let's say, that might have been ADHD, only 2 of them really would benefit from medication. But the kids that most of them had anxiety issues. It was stuff that outside of their control, or even in the classroom. Because frankly, how would you feel if you go to class every day and your teacher has decided that you're a troublemaker, has made no effort to engage you, knows that you need movement breaks, isn't giving them to you, and so that's the thing. And he made a reference to kids being able to sit for 12 hours at a time playing video games, right? And so then the question is, well, then why can't they sit in the classroom? Those video games are designed to stimulate our pleasure centers in our brain. And therefore, they will naturally keep you engaged in a way that the classroom environment simply can't. It simply can't. So I wouldn't jump to the conclusion of just because a kid can play video games for all those hours that they don't necessarily have ADHD. But what I will agree with him that at least in my practice, I found people overly identifying children as ADHD when it was really an anxiety disorder. But equally frustrating was when I did have those 1 or 2 kids who really did have ADHD and I knew could benefit from medicine, and their parents refused to put it on them. Because I've had experiences where kids ended up with special education, IEPs, and being put in a SPED track because the parent refused to put them on medication. If the parent had put them on medication, because that kid really could not focus at all. I'm pretty certain, I don't know because they didn't try, that the child would have stayed in a regular education classroom and been able to learn.
What is a SPED? I mean, what did you just say? A
SPED, special education
track.
Yeah, well, so in DC public schools, which is the system that I know best because the laws change, and that's where I was recently. If a child is identified as having a disability, so usually what it is that something's not, the child isn't up to the standard. whether it be the academic standard or the behavioral standard. And by behavioral standard, meaning that they're having one too many outbursts, that they're disrupting instruction too much. So if a child is thought to maybe have a disability, they will undergo testing to identify what type of disability there is. ADHD is one of those categories. And then they're given a plan, an individualized educational plan. And that plan is supposed to change how that child receives instruction. Usually the accommodations are small group instruction instead of only in the big classroom, being pulled out, maybe even one-on-one if that's what's warranted. For kids with serious behaviors, they might be put in a classroom with other children who have a similar disability, but then it's a smaller classroom size and more adults.
Got it.
So that's what I'm talking about.
What are your thoughts on college kids using Adderall to focus and diagnosing themselves? Like, I've had colleagues when I was in school like, I can't focus, so I just buy Adderall from my friend, and that helps me focus for my tests.
So that's outside of my area of expertise.
Okay.
But what I will say, generally speaking, is I feel like that was just part of this millennial, like there was so much pressure. I was able to get into Georgetown scoring in the 82nd percentile. Of the SATs. Mm-hmm. Like I've always been like a solid B+. And then once I hit my stride, I was an A student, but I was able to get a pretty good education as a B student. You can't do that anymore, and so that pressure, I think, just made people feel like they needed to perform, and Adderall does help you perform. It'll help you do that. Now, I personally am one that doesn't want to be dependent on any substance. Mm-hmm. That's my personal leaning. But I'm not judged for anybody else. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm not judged for anybody else. So, yeah.
But something I wanted to hit on, I wanted to kind of go back a couple of steps when you were talking about the children having an anxiety disorder and, not treating the needs of kids with anxiety. I think that's really big, especially our children, because if you're a child growing up in Chicago or Baltimore or Memphis or any of these cities that are troubled and riddled with gun violence and just general violence, because that's how the neighborhood is designed. And we know systematically our government, from a financial discourse, has put certain types of people in that place. And we know that affects blacks more so than other groups. So they think that a child is inherently bad or has a problem. And, they're like, oh, they're disrupting. If you watch shows like The Wire, we just watched the show the other day, I Kill Giants, where it's a white girl, she's slapping teachers, she cutting a fool because her mom is dying, right? But with
and
black
kids, understood and allowed,
exactly, and she's being treated the way she needs to be treated.
I didn't understand what was going on,
and they're not treating the issue with suspension or with punishment,
right?
And I feel like with our children, a young man cuts up in class, a woman is acting out in class, we never once say, well, what's going on at home that they will display this kind of behavior.
Agreed.
Or that they're drawn to gangster behavior.
Agreed.
We automatically say, well, no, they're a thug, they're a gangster, let's put them in jail. But no one looks at our children or our community and say, well, why is it that young black men or black women have to act out this way?
Agreed.
No one is going to the social aspect. And I think, because you work with policy, I feel like we can have that conversation, but it's like, what would be the steps to change those? Does it start with us individually?
Yes,
does accepting treatment?
Absolutely. Well, I would say, and that's why I left policy, right? Because frankly, the person's perceptions that need to change is the teacher at the front of the classroom. It's not the chancellor. The chancellor can think whatever he wants, but if, the teacher at the front of the classroom, because, you get from people what you expect from them. That's the bottom line, and there's a lot of people that want to argue. Fine, go ahead, argue. I'm not going to argue that with you. But my experience has been that you get from people what you expect from them. And so if I expect that this child is incapable of learning, is unteachable, which I've heard teachers say this, that this child is unteachable, that they are a behavior problem, that every time this kid comes up to my classroom door, and this is black and white teachers, more often white teachers, but black and white teachers, nobody's off the hook here. You know, that every time this child comes to the door, I'm cringing because I'm like, oh my God, you know, like there are literally teachers who, and you know, and I don't want to come down too hard on teachers because I feel their pain, you know, like it's a hard being a teacher is a hard job. But when your position is that there are kids that I pray don't show up to school that day, you don't think that kid knows that? They know that. They feel that. They sense that. And they say, yes, whatever it is that you expect from me, I'm going to give it right back to you. You know, and so if that's the experience that I'm having in the classroom as a child, how do you think that's going to make me feel?
Yeah.
I'm going to be anxious about, and now remember that back in the 80s, like school was like the safe place. You know, like you left the neighborhood behind, or, you know, home might have been crazy, but you came to school, you got a hot meal, you had a teacher that cared, you know, and you got to play. Now, I'm still leaving that environment and I'm coming in the door and I don't feel like I belong here. So now I carried in the anxiety in the door. Now all these things are happening around me that make me feel even more anxious, like I don't belong, or more sad. What? Of course I'm gonna act out.
And I was gonna say, and can we talk about the cycle of anxiety? Because we just had some teachers on the show, and they said that they feel anxiety to meet the standard that the state puts on them about passing these many kids. Pressure. So I'm wondering if that is also then that energy is then transferred into the kids. It
absolutely is.
Okay.
It absolutely is. And that's why I always try to tread very lightly, and I don't ever want to be considered a basher, because I could not take that job because too much is expected of them. But as far as like, if I were to say, you know, all of mental health, I couldn't really say the cycle of anxiety, but the cycle of how you feel, you have to get ahead of your feelings before it happens, right? And so by that I mean, if I'm a teacher, then I've got to find something positive and engaging to think about before I walk through that front door. You know, Cat Williams said it in one of his stand-ups years ago. It was the 2008 one. It's Pimpin'. You have to be in tune with your star player.
Okay?
You have to be in tune with your
facts,
star
though.
player. And, you know, because there were jobs that I've had where my relationship with my superiors, the work that I had to do, could be very distracting. But I was in tune with my star player. And therefore, I was able to focus on what mattered in that moment. So for a teacher or for anybody, why am I here? Because it's a reliable paycheck and I like how I'm able to spend my money. That's fine. If that's all you have, focus on that. Think about that vacation that you're going to buy with that paycheck or whatever it is, you know, or, you know, there are some kids here that I really feel I'm making a difference for. Focus on that. You know, I actually really like math. And that's what I get to teach. Focus on that. But find something positive before you walk in that door that you can engage with. One, so something to change your thoughts. But two, you've got to have some tools to deal with your anxiety or your depression, but mostly anxiety as you're feeling it. Meaning, there's an app called Breathe to Relax.
Breathe to Relax.
Breathe, BRETHE, the number 2, and relax.
Okay.
I don't have no money in it. But I ask all my clients to download it because it teaches you diaphragmatic breathing. You can go on YouTube and look up diaphragmatic breathing. And for people who suffer from PTSD even, this is helpful, right? And so you can go and breathe deeply. You want to move your diaphragm, the muscle down here, so that it triggers triggers a nerve on your spine and it triggers the relaxation response. And you will immediately go from fight or flight mode to relaxed.
Wow.
You know, so when you have that tool and you feel yourself getting worked up, breathe deep and you can calm down. So you have to get ahead of it. You know, mental health is not a reactive thing. It's a proactive thing.
But, you know, I guess, you know, as you were talking, it's just helping me understand how broad this conversation is.
Yes.
You know, a key thing you said is you get out of people what you expect out of them, right?
Yes.
And I know there's validity to that statement because we just had a judge on not too long ago, Marilyn Pierre. Well, she's running for judge, but I'm confident she will get elected.
Yes.
Go Marilyn Pierre.
Speak life.
But, you know, one thing that she made a comment about was, you know, sometimes judges already have made up their mind whether somebody's guilty or not. And then they're looking at the evidence only from the standpoint of trying to prove their first, preconceived idea about how this case is going to go.
Right.
And they only see the evidence, not objectively, but they only see it from the way of this to prove what their initial thought process is. And they almost overlook all other details. And so, like when you talk about just how teachers look at students, it's not just our teachers, our police officers, our politicians.
That's what really stuck out to me from the Mike Brown case, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I forget who it was that was talking about, but they were going back to the police's deposition.
Mm-hmm.
And they were using these words to describe Mike Brown. Like it was as if he was hulking up, and as if he was gonna run through the bullets. And like all of these words, you're not describing a human being.
Yeah, you're describing a beast.
Yes.
Some kind of animal.
Yes.
And I think, that I think about mental training, I think I came into this conversation thinking more or less about, what help we need as a black community.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that help is beyond just what we need. There's a lot of white people, even though they may go get therapy, there's a portion of their therapy that's not being taught to them. It's just how you conceive other people.
Yeah.
And that conversation can't be had because the fact that their community is more willing to get that help, but we don't see that change in how they're treating us in general, then I know that's being overlooked in those conversations.
I tell my clients, it is my intention to work myself out of a job, so I have no desire for you to sit on my couch for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, like come back day after day with the same problem.
Mm-hmm.
It is my intention to help you get to a better place so that you don't need me anymore.
Nice.
Now, if everybody's position were like that, then mental health would look different. People would feel different, because and some people just need somebody to talk to, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's what you need, have at it. But that's not that's not what I do, And so I think I bring that up because when you start to think about, yes, we all need mental health, but we all need to need to be committed and believe that we can be better.
Mm-hmm.
You have to believe that we can be better.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, do you have a therapist?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's now. I started on this journey in my mid-20s. I went and first saw someone for 9 months straight, twice a week. It was not a game. I was like, somehow I'm not living the life that I really want to live, and I'm not sure how.
Mm-hmm.
And my therapist was a white woman at the time, excellent therapist, really helped me become aware of my own thought process and how I saw the world was impacting the world that I lived in. And then I went back again a year or two later when I needed help for a week at a time. And now recently, because of my own stuff regarding work, I went back and started seeing someone again, this time a Latino male. And so, I am, yes, I believe, I try to practice what I teach.
Yeah, I personally would like to see a therapist. I'm not going to necessarily put weekly or monthly, but I think it would be good. I think every person should have somebody that they can be vulnerable with, because I think a lot of times, I'm going to speak from the position of fear. You want to go back to what you were saying before. You want to tell somebody who you love or close to you who's hurting you how you feel, but you're scared of how they're going to react, how they're going to take it, and then you're also scared to compromise the relationship. We didn't talk about therapy in my family. The first person in my family to bring up therapy was my sister, and I remember when she said, "I'm seeing a therapist," I remember my family was just like, "Girl, there's nothing wrong with you.
Right.
Why are you seeing a therapist?"
Right.
And at that time, I thought, she was crazy. Like, why are you seeing a therapist? And then once I talked to her and understood the importance of emotions, and through time, I think our relationship even got better because we were able to speak and identify where we were having issues.
Yeah.
And it improved our communication.
Well, and that's the thing, is that if she's a happier person, then y'all are gonna be a happier couple. Like, the way that you communicate, the better off I am, the better I am. And so, and that's the thing, and that's the other reason why I shifted from public policy to therapy, because I realized that the only way I could really bring around the change that I'm hoping to experience in this lifetime is by helping myself get better, and then everybody else around me as a result. You know what I mean? But this big picture change, people will do it, good for them. I am very much wanting each and every one of us to be better somehow, and then change will happen.
Yeah, and like we're about to be out of time.
Yeah.
But one thing that I know that recently I started doing, because I'm a military vet, and I've been deployed and all that. So you go through the things that you see while in battle or whatever. And I just recently started reaching out to get help to deal with that. And then as you start dealing with that, you start uncovering other things that you need help with as well. So I realized it's really important. And then you talked about jobs, and we're gonna have you come back on again, because there's a lot of people. And I think a lot of times, Black people especially, there's an anxiety that you deal with going into work, because how certain groups look at you. And then sometimes some jobs are just stressful. I'm in a sales arena, and it's a very stressful,
competitive,
place to be at. And when you talk about just being in line with your star player, I listen to a lot of Rick Ross before I go to work, because I got to get in my mind, look, I'm a hustler, and this person may be this way and that person got to be this way. I got to remember why I'm here to get it in, and it's helped. But there's a lot of people, it's hard for them to find that center.
Yes.
So definitely, you think about this treatment. There's so many ways to get treatment, and I hope that people have watched this show today, and their mindset will change, and they'll go get the help they need, because I think it's gonna be so beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, and I have to say that it's a critical moment right now, because we're having this conversation. I remember hearing Jay-Z talk about it in his New York Times interview when he went and got help. There was a comedian a Black male comedian who talked about it in the Two Dope Queens episode. He talked about himself getting therapy, and there was a third Black male celebrity. And when you hear Black men start talking publicly about getting therapy, the game has changed.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. And I'm happy that we had this conversation today. Can you tell people where they can find you if they want to reach out to you and get some help?
Yeah.
Yes.
Promote yourself, girl. Promote yourself.
If you are interested in contacting me, please send me an email at Rosenny, ROSENNY, at Luminous, LUMENUS, counseling, COUNSELING.com.
All right, and we'll make sure that we'll post that link in our Facebook and our IG.
Thank you, and I also have my number, but now nobody remembers numbers.
Yeah,
I know.
We'll make sure that people reach out to your email. Do you have any social media handles that people could reach out to you as well?
ro.zen.ny.
All right,
on
cool.
Instagram, yeah.
And in 5 seconds, if you could just tell people who look like us why help is important, what would you say?
Because we are all born to live our very best life.
Okay.
Not a mediocre life, not a halfway life, our very best life. And anything that's preventing you from doing that, it needs to go. It needs to go.
I appreciate that. Look, you've been a blessing on the show today. I think that this show has blessed people. And as they start viewing it even more so, like on YouTube, and when we push it out to our Facebook and everything, I hope people are really inspired by this to go get the help they need. Can you tell people where they can find the Nitty Gritty Show?
Yes, we are on YouTube, IG, and Facebook, and it's simple, at The Nitty Gritty Show. And again, we are working on our Twitter, and hopefully we'll be on SoundCloud soon enough, so you guys can just download us on Google Play. Hopefully. We're working on some things.
Yeah, quick administration announcement before I close this out. New shirts out here. Y'all got to get that. The links will go hot for those this week, so you can go to Amazon. So that way if you have issues, you don't have to worry about getting poor customer service. I know Amazon going to take care of it. You need to send something back, so that's great. And we work with Prime, so that'll work for you guys. But it's been a great show. I'm really excited about it. But we'll close out. It's your boy Jay DaCosta,
and it is your girl Katniss.
Together we are
the
Nitty Gritty Show. Look, so happy that you came on today.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, full of life, a lot of great knowledge. We're gonna have you come back soon.
I'm with it.
Yeah, really. So hey, you guys be blessed. Happy Easter for everyone that was watching today, and y'all be all right. It's the Nitty Gritty Show.